I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Shawn T. Murphy. He is a profound thinker and a spiritual guide, and he is intertwining the realms of modern medicine and spiritual healing in his latest installment of Torn Between Two Worlds, delving into a hands-on approach towards understanding and overcoming spiritual afflictions. The book's name, Torn Between Two Worlds, Modern Medicine and Spiritual Healing. We're delighted to have Shawn join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel. Shawn, thanks so much for being our guest today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Logan. I'm very excited to discuss my work with you today.
Well, it's important work. You know, you hear a lot about the mind-body connection, but you don't hear that much between or about the spirit-body connection. And some people, many of us, all of us at one point in our lives, suffer from spiritual illnesses, don't you think?
Well, that's true. And it's really a sad situation because the doctors who have spent their careers pursuing these fields, they've been ostracized by the medical community. And it's really a sad situation that the medical community does not recognize that we have a spirit. And that spirit carries injuries, it carries trauma from previous lives.
And there's nothing more clear than when a person dies, you can see the spirit leave their body. I mean, it's just amazing. The difference between being alive one moment and being not alive the next moment is profound. And for doctors who deal with this phenomenon all the time, you would think they'd realize that that's more than just a heartbeat, because the machines can do that. It's more than just brainwaves. It is the spirit. How would you define spiritual illnesses?
Well, there are a number of spiritual illnesses that we deal with. You know, once you realize that we are spiritual beings incarnating in multiple lifetimes, that means that we carry with us a history, a spiritual medical history. And this has best been shown by the works of Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker about reincarnation, about the physical injuries that travel from one lifetime into the next. The children are born with birthmarks exactly equal to the bullet wound, the stab wound that killed them in a previous lifetime. That's the physical injury that comes along. But what about the trauma that comes with it? The fear of weapons, the fear of heights, the fear of drowning, all these fears come with that trauma. The other thing that comes with that previous life is relationships, both positive and negative. People that we had conflict with in a previous life, if that conflict's not resolved by the time we die, that conflict follows you into the next life. Some cultures call it karma, some call it fate. But that is a negative relationship that you bring with you. You bring positive relationships with you too. But then there's the spiritual traumas that happen during childhood, where basically children are indoctrinated into a belief system of their parents, which is not aligned with their spirit. So you have this spiritual being coming into this lifetime. They have talent, they have a history with them, and they have knowledge that the parents deny. You know, I've met clairvoyants who fought their whole life to try and tell people that they see these beings around them. And they were told that they were witches. They were told that, you know, they're imaginary. They told they were crazy. But it's reality to them because they see the spiritual beings around them. And that trauma lasts a lifetime. Being told what your reality is not real. And those are the type of people that I've been working with. I met this woman who I dedicated my book to at the age of 42, and she said to me, "You were the first person in my lifetime who's recognized me for who I am." And can you imagine that? Being 42 years old and never being recognized?
Do you think a lot of people like her are misdiagnosed as perhaps psychotic or schizophrenic, something like that?
Well, there are different issues. Schizophrenia is a different issue itself. It has
Sure.
to do with those relationships I told you about.
Mhm.
I mean, these are spiritual beings that want revenge, and the voices that people are hearing are real beings. It's not something in their head. They're real beings who, want to exact their revenge on them, and it's torture for those
Yeah.
suffering from schizophrenia who,
So you
are.
feel schizophrenia is not just a chemical imbalance of the brain, that these just might actually be people who are battling real demons in their head, real spiritual demons, who are giving them messages, fighting with them, or whatever the case might be.
Not every single case, but
Right.
certainly the people that I've worked with who've been on antipsychotics their whole life and they don't work.
Yeah.
Those are the people that I've been talking to who finally realize that, yes, these are demons that they brought into this life. Um, and then there are spiritual ways to defend against those.
Do you feel some people are more attuned to the spiritual realm than others? Do you feel children are more attuned to the spiritual realm than adults?
Well, certainly, a child comes into this world from the spiritual world, and they haven't built up the doctrines and dogmas that an adult has. And so, yes, many children see the spiritual beings around them, and their parents say that they're, imaginary friends or whatever, but they're real. And as they grow up, if their parents keep denying it, they won't want to mention it anymore. Um, they want to fit in
Yeah.
society. And if that's not acceptable in society, then they don't fit in. They don't want to push, and they push it out of their consciousness.
Well, that's what school is all about. It's basically making everybody the same, taking the cookie cutter, do this, do that, do that, and you get your A's and you progress, say something different, see something different, and then you're a troublemaker or whatever. Tell me a little bit about your professional life beyond writing this book, the types of people you work with, how people could get in touch with you. Is it done in person? Is it done online? Tell me a little bit about your career.
Well, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. This is my sixth entrepreneurial job that I have right now. I I was a aerospace engineer. I was a mechanical engineer. I was an investment manager, and now I help companies and people to realize their visions, both in the material world and in the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, I guide people to help to realize their spiritual goals in their lifetime and to overcome the negative aspects that they've been faced with.
Mm.
So I do my work mostly online. I do, work around here in Switzerland, but a lot of the people I speak to are, from the English speaking parts of the world. So that's mostly online.
Gotcha. What are some of the things that you mentioned in your book that people can do to increase their spiritual strength?
Well, there's a lot of things, and just starting with positivity. There's a lot of negativity in the world, and we bring it home with us. We bring it home in the forms of, envy, of greed, or whatever. It's negative energy, and Dr. Emoto has done a great job of showing that scientifically that negative energy has an impact on the material world. He's done it with water. if you know his work on the water crystals. And so getting rid of that negative energy in our house, in our life, is a very important first step. And you can do that through the use of what Emoto came out with, this Hadu water, which is taking water and adding positive energy to it, gratitude, love, and using that water in your cooking and drinking it, and so that you're bringing positive energy into your system. You can, cleaning your house. There's a bunch of different methods of cleaning your house, either with incense or with sage or with crystals. Just getting rid of the negativity that's around you, and especially in the negativity in the way we act. I find it very depressing when I hear parents, talking down to their children.
Yeah.
Because that negativity carries with them. Finding a way to interact positively with our people in our family and people around us is very helpful.
The many lives that people have lived, according to reincarnation, is almost infinite, would you say? It's how many past lives do you think a ordinary person is carrying within their spirit?
Well, what we know from the research that I've read, and this comes from reincarnation research and research done on ghosts, the ones who hang around here for a long time. It's about 30 lifetimes that we go through. And if you think about just doing the math, 30 lifetimes with maybe an average of 300 years between the lifetimes, that's about 12,500 years to get 30 lifetimes. And yeah, that fits very well with what we know, what people carry with them in past life memories. It wasn't yesterday, it was a couple hundred years ago. It was.
Do you think this accounts for what people attribute to instinct?
Well, instinct, I think, has a lot more to do with inspiration, with the spirit, the knowledge in the spirit. That's how I've lived my life. I know by this pang in my heart if I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I know if I'm on my right path. And that's one of the major ways to overcome depression and negativity in your life, is that if you can align your physical life, your work life, with what your spirit wants to do, then you can find fulfillment, because your spirit's happy, your body's happy, and there's no misalignment. People go through a midlife crisis because there's misalignment. There's this voice inside of them that's getting louder and louder as they get older. And finally it gets too loud and they say, no, I'm doing the wrong thing. I need to do something different.
When did you realize that you were connected to the spiritual realm so concretely?
Oh, it's probably when I was 45, I believe, probably was the strongest connection. I never remembered my childhood. My first memories came when I was 14. And so I went on a journey, pretty long journey, to discover what happened in my childhood. In that journey, that's when I really found myself, my true self, and then started to follow that path.
What can someone do to connect? And is it a healthy thing to do, to connect with your past lives, to reconcile what's happening into you what's happening within you, the multi-layers of person that you are.
Well, I'm not a big advocate of doing past life regressions.
Mm-hmm.
I love the work of Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you know his work. Mm-hmm. He founded the concept of logotherapy, and that is really standing where you are. What is the best thing that I can do going forward? Okay, not worrying about everything I did wrong in the past or everything that did wrong to me in the past, but where I am, what's my best way forward? And that's why most people don't remember their past lives, is because that's the gift we're given. We get a clean slate, okay? And we can go forward from here. We really shouldn't worry about what was behind us. In my opinion, I think logotherapy has shown better results in treating mental illness than psychoanalysis has, of digging up the past and keep digging and digging.
Yeah.
People get stuck in the past.
Yeah, I agree. You got to live for today and live for tomorrow. The past is the past, and sometimes you remain the past.
And do the best with what you have.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about your book series. How many books you have written? Is each one different, or is each one just a kind of a new edition of the last? Tell me a little bit about your writing.
Well, I started writing after my daughter had her stroke, and when she was at the age of 20. Mm-hmm. And the first 3 books basically summarized the studies of my lifetime. So the first book is the battle between science and religion. And so I've studied a lot of history and philosophy, and talk about in simple terms what happened between science and religion. And in the founders of logic back in the times of Euclid, Pythagoras, Archimedes, Socrates, they had no separation between science and religion. They saw the world holistically. Okay, and Galileo went back to that time to refine science. Erwin Schrödinger went back to that time to figure out where science went wrong. But that's what I think we need to do is look at the world holistically, mm-hmm. and not in opposition to each other. That's the first book. The second book is interesting for the current situation. It's trying to recognize wisdom over rhetoric. How do we find wisdom in today's lifetime when all this rhetoric is being thrown around? The fourth book is between the material world and the spiritual world. How do you live your life basically in the 2 worlds that we are associated with? And then those are philosophical books, mm-hmm. Which draw on the lifetime's works of many, many people, as I said, from people like Galileo and Einstein and Schrödinger. The fourth book was an inspiration from readers of my first 3 books. They said, well, what can we do? What practically things can we do to help us out of the situations that we're in? And so the fourth book is a self-help book. Mm-hmm. And as I say, it's for anybody, because anybody that I've met can always improve themselves. Yeah. And even if you're down in the dumps, you can still improve yourself, because there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. You write about human dualism. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's the dualism of we are a spiritual being living in a physical body. And that dualism, the spirit can heal the body, and the body can injure the spirit. They're together. So if we heal our spiritual body, we can help heal our physical body. But as I said in the beginning, if the spirit comes into this life with an injury, it can imprint on the physical body. And there's a lot of consequences, as I said, to that dualism. Right now, people are talking mind, body, and soul. It's more complicated than that. We have intellect, we have emotion, so we have an intellectual self and an emotional self. We have a spiritual self. And then we have these shadows that we carry around with us.
And that's darkness from past lives?
No, it can be from past lives. It can be from childhood.
Yeah.
The shadows that we're afraid of, that we don't like to bring out in the light. And a lot of, whether it's a fanaticism or if it's an addiction, these shadows, they need to be brought into the light.
How do you think modern medicine and spiritual healing can complement each other? Do you think the two views on life can intersect and both make us better human beings, better people?
Well, I think they can. I don't know if you've read After by Dr. Bruce Grayson.
Yeah.
Bruce Grayson studied during his whole medical career near-death experiences, thousands of them. And at the end of his book, I mean, he's published all this information, but at the end of the book, he challenges modern doctors to look at this. He's shown that consciousness is not part of the human body. With all this research, he's shown that it's not part of. He doesn't know what it's a part of. He doesn't take that step forward, but it's not part of the human body. So how can you treat consciousness with anything physical? Okay. And Dr. Edith Fiore wrote the same thing 20 years ago. She said, psychiatrists are the only doctors who actually talk to their patients. So she called out to the Psychiatric Association, talk to your patients and listen to your patients, because you're the only one doing it. We don't have enough time to spend with doctors. We've in and out 10 minutes, right?
Pulse, blood pressure, listen to your chest, look in your eyes, look in your ears, and palpate your stomach, and you're done. So, but yeah, nobody's certainly asking you about your spirit or your soul. That's for sure. Do you think that there's a way that we can take a more holistic approach? Well, actually, I was going to ask you something else. I remembered what it was. We live in an extremely violent time right now. I think it dates back to, I think Columbine shootings were the turning point, but we have mass shootings all the time. We have so much violence that heretofore was unheard of. The crimes we hear about today every week are much more violent, much more deadly, much more vicious than had ever occurred in the past. What do you think's behind that? Is it also part of this spiritual realm that's being ignored?
Well, I think so. And I think one of the biggest points that I talk about in my book is raising children. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a big problem today, of not recognizing the needs of the child, as you said, the cookie cutter approach in mm-hmm. school, not looking for the talents that they have and supporting those talents. I've talked to a number of people, ask them the question about, well, did your parents support you in going in this direction? And they said, well, no, they let me do it. And there's a big difference between letting them do it and really supporting them and not knowing what they're doing, but supporting them and being a cheerleader and say, go for it. I mean, I was given a daughter who I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. She's a singer, a dancer, musician. I'm an engineer, right?
Yeah.
I became her cheerleader because, I just found the best coaches for her. And, she just blossomed outside of the school system because the school system didn't recognize any of those talents, as you probably know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Creativity, artistic ability, all of that is largely ignored by the schools. She's blessed to have a dad like you, but I think you're very, very right in that saying that the care we're giving our children, the upbringing we're giving our children is at the root of the problem with violence in society. Before we leave you today,
because I didn't finish the thought, and you just started finishing the thought there, is because if we're not giving our children a path to fulfillment, they become angry. Some of them, right? Some have become depressed. I mean, on the other side of the violence is the high rate of teen suicide. Okay, they get depressed. Some get violent. Right. And I think both of those are an outcome of them not seeing their future, them not seeing a path for them where they're accepted, where they're supported. And, a lot of these young, angry boys, they get violent.
Yeah.
We have to find a way, and Michael Goldman talks about that in emotional intelligence. We have to help them understand what their feelings are when they're young.
Absolutely.
And understand it's not always anger. Maybe it's fear. I mean, but everything leads to anger nowadays.
Yeah.
We have to help them become cognizant of what they're feeling.
And also, if people do become more aware of the spiritual realm, I think there'll be greater empathy, because empathy certainly is what's lacking. Is if you kill someone, and you don't realize the impact it's going to have on that person's life, and as you say, on future generations, because that life, that spirit goes on living, and is now wounded, mortally wounded, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
The one thing that we didn't talk about is that the big barrier is the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
People looking for a quick fix for something and thinking of the pill will fix it. This antidepressant, this anti-anxiety medication or whatever will fix the problem. But, I go back to what Edith Fiore said. You need to spend time with people and understand what's bothering them. What's, they're being pushed in this direction and they want to go in this direction. It tears people apart.
And by the medications, often they're just being numbed. They're not actually being treated for the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about my family experiences in that regard. I mean, they lead to addiction.
Yeah. And dependence, and a whole list or a whole host of other problems that didn't exist before you started taking those pharmaceuticals. Important points for sure. Absolutely. Well, it's an amazing book. There's a lot in there to unpack. There's a lot in there to think about. There's a lot in there that will help you as we go along on this journey we call life. It is called Torn Between Two Worlds, Modern Medicine and Spiritual Healing. It is written by Shawn T. Murphy. It is a very, very thoughtful book. This isn't some kind of flaky new age thing. This is a well thought out philosophical doctrine, and I think you'll find it fascinating. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Oh, thank you so much, Logan.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.